What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, it has been brought to my attention, and many people have been asking me now, what do I think about the comments made by Hall of Fame, well-renowned promoter, iconic promoter, top-ranked CEO, Bob Errol, and comments made by undefeated 3-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the reigning undisputed welterweight world champion, who is widely acknowledged and recognized as the #1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, in Terrence Bud Crawford, who is now 40 wins, no loss and no draw, 31 big wins by way of knockout. He is 35 going on 36 years of age, 5'8", with a 74-inch arm reach. That is this the exposure? Has former unified 3-belt WBA, WBC, IBF welterweight world champion, superstar boxer Errol the True Spence Jr., who is 28 wins, 1 loss, no draws, 22 big wins by way of knockout. He is 33 years of age, 5'9.5" with a 72-inch arm reach. Has their July 29th, Las Vegas, Nevada, T-Mobile Arena showdown that was on paper scheduled to be 50-50, if there ever were one, competitive fight, was one of the most highly anticipated fight in the last 10 years, the last decade. And it turned out to be anything but that, as Errol Spence was dropped in the second round, dropped twice in the 7th round, and stopped in the 9th round. And he was battered this from the second half of the 3rd round, 4th, 5th, and 6th, and the 8th round. And many people thought the fight should have been stopped in the 6th and 7th round. With that said, the question was raised, as Bob Errol once again raised the question. Errol Spence has historically had issues with Southpaws. And while he's only been in the ring with 2 Southpaws his entire career, and that Errol Spence can't deal with the southpaw stance. He can't see the punches. Now, prior to Terrence Crawford fight, Errol Spence has faced 2 southpaws in his career. He faced Emmanuel Latte. That was October 14th of 2013, right? And then another southpaw, September 11th of 2015. Okay? So, in 2013, October 2013, he faced Emmanuel Latte. In September 2015, he faced Chris Van Heerden. Okay? Chris Van Heerden at the time was 23 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw. Okay? And Emmanuel Latte was undefeated fighter. Okay, Emmanuel Latte was 16 wins, no losses, 15 wins, no losses, 1 draw. So these are the 2 southpaws he faced in his career. Now, I rewatched the fights because Terrence Crawford, the buildup for this fight was Terrence Crawford's southpaw stance, orthodox stance, his versatility. He has extremely long arms. He's able to switch from southpaw to orthodox. He can fight, going backwards, coming forward in the pocket. He's a dog, right? But he's a very, very, very versatile boxer who can box, who can bang. He's only went the distance in his career a total of 3 times since becoming a world champion in 2014 when he beat Ricky Burns in the UK for his title. He and Ricky Burns went the distance. He and Beltran went the distance. And he and Victor Postol went the distance. But even the Victor Postol fight, which was a unification bout, and Victor Postol was viewed as the boogeyman in the junior welterweight division, he dropped Victor Postol twice in that fight and dominated the fight. And so it begged the question. Errol Spence is big. He's a natural southpaw. He's fundamentally sound, good jab, and a pressure fighter with an extremely high work rate. And if you get in a dogfight with him, he'll break you down. His last fight before this fight, he faced off in a unification bout against Cuban former WBA world champion, star boxer Yordenis Ugas. He broke his ribs, nose, and orbital bone en route to a 10th round stoppage victory. So Errol Spence is seen as a naturally bigger guy who started his career at junior middleweight, 154, then campaigned and became a world champion at 147. Terrence Crawford started his career at 130, became a champion 135, 140, and 147. Naturally seen as the smaller guy. So what was the difference in this fight? I asked the question, but it got overlooked twice as I asked the question. I asked the question to Errol Spence and I asked the question to Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford has the ability to switch from southpaw to orthodox, but Terrence Crawford predominantly fights, especially at welterweight, in the southpaw stance. That's where he gets all his victories, in the southpaw stance, okay? So I asked Terrence Crawford and I asked Errol Spence, what is it about the southpaw stance that makes the opponent so uncomfortable? We know southpaws for orthodox fighters is uncomfortable because there's not many left-handed people in the world. And so you don't get a lot of left-handed fighters to prepare for. And the angles, it's hard to prepare for. And you know, the way they deliver their punches. But why does southpaws not like to fight southpaws? And I asked the question. But my question got overshadowed because Errol Spence questioned my loyalty and said, why did I switch up on him? And that's what everybody focused on, opposed to the actual question that I asked. The question was, how do you defend and how do you deal with the southpaw stance? And why is it not comfortable for you as a southpaw to face another southpaw? And Errol Spence, he doubled back after that, and he came back and he gave me a breakdown of the southpaw and why it's so difficult. When I asked Terrence Crawford said, we'll just have to see, is what Terrence Crawford stated, okay? I said, are you going to fight southpaw? Are you going to fight orthodox? He said, we'll just have to see what the game plan is. Well, all along, Terrence Crawford knew what the game plan was. And many people focused on the fact that Errol Spence, again, struggles with southpaws. But he only fought 2 southpaws in his career. In 28 fights, in 28 fights, he only faced 2 southpaws. Now he's faced 3 southpaws in 29 fights, but he came up short in the last one. And I rewatched the Emmanuel Latte fight, and I rewatched the Chris Van Herden fight. He dominated Emmanuel Latte until the 10-second mark in the 7th round, and then he lost the 8th round. It was an 8-round fight. He got a unanimous decision victory. Against Chris Van Herden, that was a 10-round fight. He got an 8th round stoppage victory. But if you rewatch those fights, you can see the last 10 seconds, Emmanuel Latte is short, okay? 5'8" with a 70-inch arm reach. He doesn't have extremely long arms. He had a hard time closing the gap against Errol Spence, okay? He was at a athletic disadvantage and a size disadvantage, and he had a hard time closing the gap. Chris Van Herden, on the other hand, is 5'9" with a 72-inch arm reach, and he was getting to Errol Spence with his ability to box until he got stopped. Errol Spence has a high work rate, and the cream will always rise to the top. That cream being he's a more talented fighter than they are. But in those fights, you can see the flaws with the southpaw stance. That team, Crawford, Brian Bomac McIntyre, a well-renowned trainer of the year, will be another trainer of the year and future Hall of Famer. And you can see what they were talking about. Emmanuel Latte caught Errol Spence with a right hook. 10 seconds left in the 7th round. You can go back and watch the fight. It's on YouTube. 10 seconds left in the 7th round. He catches Errol Spence with a right hook. Boom! Now, throughout the fight, Emmanuel Latte every now and then is catching Errol Spence, but he has extremely short arms. And he can't get to Errol Spence like he wants to. And he started to be deflated, okay? He started to lose his confidence as Errol Spence was coming forward and aggressive, landing hooks, landing left hands. But you can see how Errol Spence was setting up all these left hands with his jab. And you can see even Emmanuel Latte was making him miss in the fight. It's just that Errol Spence was able to double up, go to the body, come back up with uppercuts. But in between there, you can see the little flaws if you understand what you're watching. And so Emmanuel Latte catches Errol Spence in 10-second mark of the 7th round and blast him. And Errol Spence loses his balance. He loses, he's faded. There's no more time left. Then you watch the 8th round with Latte and Errol Spence. And the 8th round of Latte and Errol Spence looks like the entire fight with Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence. It's reminiscent of the entire fight of Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence, which is an indication that Errol Spence has told us remember when he was asked, when did you feel Terrence Crawford's power? And he said in the 2nd round. From the moment he felt Terrence Crawford's power, he was off from that point forward. The moment he felt Emmanuel Latte's full power, he was off from that moment on. And he has a hard time judging distance and range with Southpaws. He's already a little bit out of range and off balance at times. But if you look at the Latte fight, Latte is making a miss, just not enough. So he's starting to take punishment and get broken down. But he's a smaller guy, shorter arms. He has a 2-inch arms reach disadvantage to Errol Spence, where Terrence Crawford has a 2-inch arm reach advantage over Errol Spence. You understand? Chris Van Heerden was having success with his boxing ability, but he doesn't have the power. Combined, Chris Van Heerden and Emmanuel Latte have 19 knockouts combined. You combine both their records, they have 19 knockouts. So they don't have a lot of power. Terrence Crawford has 31 knockouts and only went the distance 3 times in his career since becoming the world champion. And now you can see the flaws in the fight with Chris Van Heerden and Emmanuel Latte. Nonetheless, he didn't really struggle. He didn't struggle with Emmanuel Latte. He blasted Emmanuel Latte out until the 10-second mark, where he got a little bit too close. Bad judge of distance. Latte caught him. And then from that point forward, if you watch the 8th round, because it's only 10 seconds left in the 7th round. But if you watch the 8th round, you can see it looks like the 8th round looks like the entire fight against Terrence Crawford. And in Chris Van Heerden fight, you can see the boxing ability, the counterpunching that Chris Van Heerden is landing every now and then, right? And giving Errol Spence problems. So you can see why somebody like Terrence Crawford, who's more talented, more skilled, can have the success he had against Errol Spence. Now, a lot of people was a testament to, Errol Spence, the weight drain, so on and so forth. But he made a lot of mistakes against these Southpaws, and they wasn't able to make him pay. Although Emmanuel Latte hurt him badly, and he has a total of 7 knockouts in his career, Emmanuel Latte. He badly hurt Errol Spence, and he's not a big puncher. Chris Van Heerden has a total of 12 knockouts in his entire career. So we're not talking about big punches, but they were precise. And the angle that they used with the southpaw stance is what gave Errol Spence the problems that he had. So does Errol Spence have a problem with southpaws? I don't want to say he has a problem with southpaws, but he has a problem with the fundamentals against fighters, right? I look at Errol Spence as fundamentally sound. And then I see he makes a lot of fundamental defensive flaws. And offensively, he can be fundamentally sound, but he can be very predictable with his jab. And if you're coming from the southpaw stance, that right hand has a hard time with the right hand. And that's what he had with Terrence Crawford. So we're going to see what adjustments he makes going forward. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV. All one word. I'm gone. Peace.